With the Wuthering Waves 2.0 update, Carlotta is the talk of the town, being one of the highest DPS characters in the game right now. And if you're someone who got her, I would highly recommend looking into Zhezhi because she's having her rerun right now. Not only is she the perfect 5-star character to pair with Carlotta, but in my opinion, she's the best sub-DPS character providing coordinated attacks with high damage and in-air movement. If you've been looking for an updated build guide for Zhezhi, I got you. I'm going to be explaining exactly how her kit works on top of best weapon options, covering what echo sets to use, what teams to use her on, and damage rotation. Let's not waste any time and dive right into it. As a general overview, if you are debating on pulling for Zhezhi, her strengths include number 1, having her Ultra skill buff both resonance skill and glacio damage, which is perfect for Carlotta. Number 2, her coordinated attacks come through her resonance liberation, so even if she's not on the field, you're still going to deal some high damage. And number 3, her Forte circuit is extremely strong on top of providing that inner movement. Going over her combat roles, she has 6 of them. So first up, Concerto Efficiency, having higher energy regen. She deals higher basic attack damage and excels at coordinated attacks. She also has Resonance Liberation regen for the next Resonator, which is going to help Carlotta or whatever DPS you're using. And like I mentioned, she amplifies Glacio and Resonance skill damage. And if you're looking to get her to max level, here are all the materials you're going to need. For the Howler cores, you can find them on animal type echoes, so keep that in mind. The Lanternberry plant can be found around the Tiger's Maw, and you can actually track that if you go onto the plant's description. And for the Soundkeeping Tasicore, you're going to have to fight the Lampy Lumen Myriad. If you want to use Zhezhi effectively, we need to break down exactly how her kit works. For what skills prioritize upgrading first, I would highly recommend your Resonance Liberation first, then Forte Circuit, your Resonance skill, and then tied for last would be your normal attack and intro skill. And here are all the materials you're going to need to upgrade these skills. For the helixes you're going to need, you can either run the Forgery Challenge in Jinzhou or Arena Sita, but if you do the one in Jinzhou, you can also get those Howler cores. And for your Calamity boss material, you're going to have to fight the Bellborn. Again, you can only do 3 total boss attempts a week, so keep that in mind. A lot of Zhezhi's damage is going to come from her Forte Circuit, which they call Afflatus. She can hold up to 90, and you get it by casting your normal attacks and your intro skill. Now, under her normal attacks, she can perform up to 3 basic attacks, a heavy attack, 2 mid-air attacks, and obviously a dodge counter. Now, after you perform those attacks, you're filling up the Forte bar. What Zhezhi can do is summon what's called a Phantasmic Imprint. You can spawn them by either using your Resonance skill, which is called Manifestation, or an enhanced heavy attack called Conjuration. Now, this is where some people get confused about how her kit works in regards to spawning the Imprint, so I'm going to break it down real simple for you. With your Resonance skill, as long as you have 60 Afflatus or 2 of those sections up, you can press your Resonance skill and it will spawn the left and right imprints. Now, this is important because if you use the skill and your Forte is not charged, it will not spawn these imprints, and you'll have to wait for it to cool down before you can spawn them again. Now, another important thing to note is that if you tap the Resonance skill, the imprints will spawn near the ground, but if you hold the button, they'll actually spawn in the air. So if you want that mid-air movement and get out of the way of enemies, you're going to need to hold that Resonance skill button. That leads into the heavy attack Conjuration, which will spawn that 3rd imprint in the middle, and there's a couple of ways to spawn it. The first way is that after the basic attack stage 3, you can hold your normal button like you would for your heavy attack, and it will actually spawn an imprint. The next way, which I find the easiest, is that after you use your Resonance skill, whether you spawn them on the ground or in the air, if you press your normal attack button, it'll actually spawn that one in the middle. The next 2 ways is that whether you're in midair or after you perform a successful dodge, if you have the energy in your Forte bar, you can actually hold your normal attack and it will spawn it. Now, there's one more way to spawn it, but first I want to talk about actually teleporting to the Phantasmic Imprint and using it as an attack. The first thing is her Resonance skill, Stroke of Genius. So once you have those imprints out on the field, you'll actually notice your Resonance skill will change and it will have a glowing blue aura around it. That means you can actually teleport to that imprint and launch the Ivory Herald birds at the target. You'll deal glacio damage considered basic attack damage, you'll refresh your mid-air dodge attempts, and you'll gain 1 stack of Painter's Delight, which will last 8 seconds and stack up to 2 times. So you can actually perform this Resonance skill, Stroke of Genius, twice. So if you teleport to one, you deal damage, you can teleport to another and deal more damage there. And that leads into her Resonance skill, Creation Zenith. So if you already hit 2 imprints, you have 2 stacks of Painter's Delight, the last and 3rd attack is considered Creation Zenith. This is basically an improved attack of the previous 2 that you've just done. You'll move to the location of the imprint, you'll attack, you'll lose all stacks of Painter's Delight, but in this case, you'll deal higher glacio damage, considered basic attack damage, and additionally increasing your basic attack damage bonus by 18% for 27 seconds. I understand that may be confusing, and I'll explain a little bit more during the damage rotation part of the video, but in simple terms, as long as you have your Forte bar full, you can tap or hold your Resonance skill to spawn the left and right imprints, hold your basic attack button to spawn the middle one, tap your Resonance skill to teleport to each one and deal some massive damage. Now, talking about her Resonance Liberation, Living Canvas. When your active Resonator deals damage, an Inkling Spirit will be summoned to perform a coordinated attack dealing glacial damage considered basic attack damage. Now you can summon up to 1 Inkling Spirit every second, up to 21 in total, or until the Resonance Liberation runs out at 30 seconds. And as a bonus, with her first inherent skill, Calligrapher's Touch, when you cast that Resonance Liberation, Stroke of Genius, or Creation Zenith, your attack is increased by 6% for 27 seconds, and it can stack up to 3 times. So you're going to be dealing even more damage with all of those skills. Now for our outro skill, Carve and Draw, the incoming Resonator will have their Glacial damage amplified by 20% and the Resonance skill damage amplified by 25% for 14 seconds, which is obviously going to be great for Carlotta. But with her second inherent skill, Flourish, after you cast the outro, it restores 15 Resonance energy for the incoming Resonator. For her left and right column skills, you're going to get a crit rate percentage bump and an attack percentage bump. For Zhezhi's best weapon options, her signature, the Rime-Draped Sprouts, is going to be fantastic. You get a flat attack and a crit damage percentage bump, and with this perk, Panorama, which only have rank 1, keep that in mind, but you do get an attack increase of 12%. While the wielder is on the field, using Resonance skill grants 12% basic attack damage bonus, stacking up to 3 times for 6 seconds. And obviously, when you use that Resonance skill and you teleport to the Imprints, you use that 3 times pretty quickly. And at 3 stacks or above, casting your outro skill consumes all stacks of this effect and grants the wielder 52% basic attack damage bonus for 27 seconds, effective when the wielder is off the field. Now, the reason this is important is because her Resonance Liberation for the coordinated attacks is considered basic attack damage, which means you can have your Resonance Liberation deal more damage. The other 2 5-star weapon options would be either String Master, which is Yinlin's signature. You get a flat attack and a crit rate percentage bump, and with this perk, Electric Amplification, you get a percentage bump to all attribute damage bonuses, and when you cast your Resonance skill, it increases your attack by a percentage, stacking up to 2 times. The effect will last 5 seconds. When the wielder is not on the field, it increases their attack by an additional percentage. Or the 5-star standard Cosmic Ripples. You get a flat attack and an attack percentage bump. With this perk, Stormy Resolution, you get that energy regen percentage increase, and when you deal basic attack damage, it gives you a basic attack damage bonus of a certain percentage, stacking up to 5 times. If you don't have any 5-star rectifiers, don't worry, there are a couple of 4-star ones you can use. The first one being Augment from the Battle Pass. This will give you a flat attack and a crit rate percentage bump. With this perk, Forgiving Resilience, when you cast your Resonance Liberation, it's going to increase your attack by a decent percentage, lasting 15 seconds. The next one would be Fusion Accretion, which was part of the 4-star weapons that came with the 1.3 update. You'll get a flat attack and an attack percentage bump, and with this perk, Intergalactic Gaze, when you cast your Resonance skill, you're going to get Resonance energy and an attack percentage increase. The last one I'll recommend is Variation, because you get a flat attack and an energy regen percentage bump, and with this perk, Ceaseless Aria, when you cast your Resonance skill, it's gonna give you Concerto energy. For what echo sets to use with Zhezhi, she actually has 3 different options, 2 of them being sub DPS and 1 being main DPS. The first one is gonna be the new echo set with the 2.0 update, Empyrean Anthem. At 2 pieces, you get that 10% energy regen bump, and with 5 pieces, it increases the Resonator's coordinated attack damage by 80%, and upon hitting a crit hit of that coordinated attack, it increases the active Resonator's attack by 20% for 4 seconds. So as long as her Resonance Liberation can hit a coordinated attack, your current character on the field, preferably your main DPS, which in my case is going to be Carlotta, she can pretty much have a permanent 20% damage increase. At your 4-cost Echo, you're going to want the new Hecate boss with either crit rate or crit damage as the main stat. Now the cool thing with this Echo is that you'll summon 3 Twirling Crescent Servants around you, which will deal havoc damage, and if you perform a counter attack, it actually resets the duration, so they will keep spinning, so it's a good counter attack thing for Zhezhi. But the Resonator with the Echo equipped in their main slot has their coordinated attack damage increased by 40%. That's a big bump. For your 2 3-cost Echoes, I'd either go with Glacial Damage or Energy Regen, maybe one of each depending on your stats, and then for your 2 1-cost, Attack Percentage. The next Echo set would be the classic Moonlit Clouds. At 2 pieces, you get that 10% Energy Regen bump, and at 5 pieces, upon using your outro skill, it increases the attack of the next Resonator by 22.5% for 15 seconds. At your 4-cost Echo, you're going to want the Heron with either crit rate or crit damage as the main stat, and the reason being is because whether you do the tap attack for the slam or the hold attack for the fire breath, once that initial attack lands, the current character regains 10 Resonance energy, and if the current character uses their outro skill within the next 15 seconds, the next character's damage will be boosted by an extra 12% for 15 seconds. And again, for your 2 3-cost Echoes, you're either going to want Glacial Damage or Energy Regen, and your 2 1-cost Echoes, Attack Percentage. If you decide you want to do main DPS, I would recommend 5-piece Freezing Frost. At 2 pieces, you get a 10% bump in Glacial Damage, and at 5 pieces, after releasing your basic or heavy attack, you get another 10% Glacial Damage bump, and this effect can be stacked up to 3 times. times, each lasting 15 seconds. At your 4-cost echo, you're going to want the Lampy Lumen Myriad with either crit rate or crit damage as the main stat. You can perform 3 slams that will freeze targets, and with each shock, it'll increase your Glacio and Resin skill damage by 4% for 15 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. For your 2 3-cost echoes, I would either go with Glacio damage or attack percentage, and your 2 1-cost echoes, attack percentage. For your echo substats, crit rate and crit damage are at the top of the list. Next would be basic attack damage bonus and energy regen, and then lastly, attack percentage and flat attack. For Zhezhi's best team options, the premium team right now is obviously pairing her up with Carlotta and Shorekeeper. Using Zhezhi's outro skill to buff the Glacio and Resin skill damage of Carlotta turns her into an absolute unit, and then with Shorekeeper obviously giving you the healing, the crit rate, and the crit damage bumps. I would also recommend using her with Zhezhi as well. The 2 reasons being, number 1, she can provide that Resin skill damage bump, but number 2, the coordinated attacks actually help accumulate Zhezhi's incandescence so she can use her skills faster. If you want to use her as a main DPS, you can pair her up with Sanhua and Shorekeeper as well. The big thing with Sanhua, obviously giving the basic attack damage bump on her outro skill, and then Shorekeeper with the healing, crit rate, and crit damage bumps. But if you're someone who's free to play, all you have to do is replace Shorekeeper with Baizha. Even then, some other options you can use would be either Changli or Havoc Rover as your main DPS, especially if you're free to play. Pairing her up with Havoc Rover is decent. Or if you got Verena as your free 5-star character or from the box during 1.0, you can use Verena as your healer instead of Baizha. Now that we've talked about how Zhezhi's kit works, on top of some of the best options to use on her, let's break down the damage rotation. Obviously, a big thing here is building up that Forte bar, so if you use her intro skill, that will give you 45 Afflictus, and if you use her as a main DPS, this is where you would use that Lampy Lumen Myriad Echo. If you don't use the intro skill, it's not a big deal. The main thing here is using our basic attack to build up our Afflictus to max. Once your Forte bar is full, you can either tap your Resin skill to spawn the imprints near the ground or hold it to spawn them in the air, but what I like to do is that either way, I'm holding down my basic attack button to perform that heavy attack conjuration so I can spawn that one in the middle as well right after. Now, if you don't use the heavy attack to spawn the third one just yet, I think that's totally fine. It is definitely situational, whether you're having to use a dodge counter or not. But the main thing you want to do before teleporting to your first imprint is use your echo skill, whether it's the Hecate one or the Moonlit Clouds one as your sub DPS. At this point, we want to teleport to our imprints. Now, if you only spawned the first 2 and not the third one yet, don't worry. As long as you go to the first or second imprint and then hold your heavy attack button, as long as you have at least one section of the Forte up, you can actually spawn it in midair, which is pretty cool. Now, either in the middle or at the end of all that, we want to pop our Resonance Liberation because, again, we want that coordinated attack damage for our next character, and especially if you have her signature, we want that Resonance Liberation to deal even more damage. At this point, your Concerto should be full, and you can perform your outro skill, buffing your main DPS character. Like I mentioned during the kit breakdown, all you need to know is that you need to fill up that Forte bar, tap or hold your Resonance skill, hold your basic attack button, spam your Resonance skill to teleport to all 3, switch to your next character. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is her Resonance Chain and whether you should go for multiple copies of her. I was lucky enough during the 1.2 update to get her S1 Brushworks finish, which when you cast that Resonance skill, it restores 15 Resonance energy and increases your crit rate by 10% for 27 seconds. Her S2 Vivid Strokes, the max Inklet Spirit summoned by her Resonance Liberation increases by 6, so instead of 21, now you get 27. Her S3 Reflections Graced, casting any of her Resonance skills, whether it's the base one or the ones where you teleport to the Inklets, will increase her attack by 15% for 27 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. That's a big damage increase, especially after the fact. Her S4 Hue Spectrum, when you cast that Resonance Liberation, it increases the attack of all Resonators on the team by 20% for 30 seconds. Her S5 Composition's Clue, for every 3 Inklet Spirits summoned by her Resonance Liberation, 1 extra Inklet Spirit is summoned to perform a coordinated attack, dealing damage equal to 140% of the Inklet Spirit's damage considered basic attack damage. This damage dealt will not further summon Inklet Spirits. And lastly, her S6 Infinite Legacy, when you cast the Resonance skill Stroke of Genius or Creation Zenith, it summons an extra Ivory Herald to deal damage equal to 120% of the Resonance skill Stroke of Genius's damage considered basic attack damage. The thing with Zhezhi's Resonance Chain is that the more you lean into a main DPS, the less that some of these bonuses don't really benefit her a lot. But if you are leaning more into the sub DPS option, her S2, S4, and S5 are pretty good. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my updated 2.0 Zhezhi build guide. In my opinion, she's one of the most underrated characters to use, whether you're using her on a premium team or a free-to-play team, especially after playing her companion story. Even though it wasn't really impactful toward the main story overall, I found it adorable. Her design is great. And I think a lot of people passed on her because she wasn't a main DPS. We were getting Zhangli out for free later in the update. Then obviously the update after that, we got Shorekeeper. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you going to be pulling for Zhezhi alongside Carlotta so you can have a very good premium Glacio team? Or are you going to be saving up for other characters in the future? Obviously, we're going to have Roshia and Jinshi in the second half of this update, and it's been shown that we're getting Phoebe and Brant with 2.1. In any event, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on any other Wuthering Waves content we're dropping here on the channel. We also live stream here on the channel and then also over on Twitch. That link will be in the description. I know right now we have Twitch drops available for the game, so if you want some extra materials and some Astrite, be sure to stop on by. Also, if you want to join my community, hop in the Discord. We have an entire channel dedicated to Wuthering Waves, so if you want to post anything from images to build guides to anything like that, come on over. We're also talking about other games, including other gacha games, PC tech, anime, and more. Lastly, if you want to help the channel even more, you can look into becoming a member. If you don't know what a membership is, it's essentially like a Twitch subscription. Again, you're going to get access to the exclusive emotes, the monthly badges, and the big thing on the channel, which is getting access to all my long-form videos early. So if you'd like more information, all you have to do is press the join button next subscribe, and that'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been your boy. We'll catch you in the next one.